Commissioner of the Land and Environment Court, and currently I sit on a number of local and a regional panel for similar applications. Similar applications, yes.
Thank you. Jan Morell.
Jan Morell, I'm a planner of some 40 years. I've held senior positions at the local government Department of Planning. My last full-time job was as a commissioner with the Land and Environment Court, and since that time I sit on a number of panels, chair panels, and sit on the Sydney panel. Thank you.
Sandra Robinson.
Hello, my name's Sandra Robinson. I am the community rep. I live in Waverley. I also am a town planning consultant and act on a number of other local planning panels.
All right, there you have it. We'll now move on to the business of the day, and the first item relates to the proposed development at 1 Belgrave Street, Bronte. The first person listed and registered to speak at the meeting is Joe Robilliard. Are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Your 3 minutes is starting now, Mr.
Right,
Robilliard.
thank you for taking our feedback today. We endorse the conditions specified in the appendix of the Waverley DBU report, but we still have a few areas of concern. We'd like the noise issue addressed with regards to the basement level. Condition of DA consent should stipulate that the plant rooms are soundproofed with self-closing doors. It's cheaper, more efficient and appropriate to address the plant room noise issues at the construction phase rather than an after measure. The hard concrete surfaces of the basement will not absorb the noise generated in the plant rooms, which will contain air conditioning units, garden and water tank irrigation pumps, swimming pool machinery, pumps, motors and filters, pool cleaning motors, a lift motor, a car turntable motor, and the house building management system. All this plant and machinery has the potential to make noise, which would be echoed and transmitted into habitable rooms of neighbouring 2 Dixon Street. Constant mechanical hum is hard to live with day and night. Mitigation of this machinery noise has not been addressed adequately. Noise can escape through the open grille gates of the garbage storage area and the double garage door opposite the habitable rooms and windows of our property. The DBU report states it acknowledged the extent of plant and equipment proposed for this single dwelling seems excessive. We agree. The Council's Environmental Health Officer also commented having concerns regarding the amount of proposed mechanical plant and the possible detrimental noise impacts on surrounding properties. The Council's Traffic and Development Engineer is quoted saying the internal dimensions of the garage are excessive. The proposed design can accommodate 4 to 5 cars. They should be restricted so this does not occur. A turntable is not necessary. We, as our other neighbours, are concerned that the large spaces in this basement may be used later down the track as unauthorised media rooms or perhaps gym rooms with their doof-doof music, if not by the current owners, then subsequent owners, which would acoustically affect our property. The garage wall is over height at 3.8, stipulation is 3.6. It has a towering impact at laneway level with an additional 1.1 metre high fence on top, although set back 900 mil. This overheight wall could be reduced by 200 mil by any one of these 3 measures. The internal height of the garage is 2.6, could be lowered to 2.4. The soil height on top of the garage is 650 millimetres. This could be reduced to 450, which would allow grass and the planted species with a maximum height 2 metres to grow. The grass area at podium level is 4 steps up from the rear terrace of the living area. This could be lowered to flow at the same height from the terrace. Spatially and visually, this would improve the rear yard. From the supplied view montages, the 1.1 high fence on top of the podium level above the basement will visually become a solid wall covered in vines and creepers, effectively a true wall height of 5 metres and up to the 2nd story roof gutter at our property. The boundary fence should be stepped back at least 1 metre on the southern and eastern boundaries, as Council has stipulated for the western boundary. This maintains consistency and slightly reduces bulk height. Although the chimney has been lowered, height, bulk and scale is still significant for the neighbourhood and neighbouring properties. The architect's drawing DA 3111 view comparison shows the view up Dixon Street looking northeast. The separate chimney stack is still massive. It is important that the DBU report stipulate maximum 2 metre height of plant species in the rear yard on top of the built-up 3.8 metre high garage is retained, so as not to affect solar cells to Dixon Street in situ for 2 years. Thank you. Sorry, I went so fast.
Thank you very much indeed for your trouble, Ms. Rebillard.
I hope I didn't go too fast for everyone.
No, you weren't too fast for us. We're very quick. But I'll
Thank
just
you.
see if there are any questions from any member of the panel. Mr. Brown?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Robinson?
No, thank you.
Ms. Morell?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Rebillard. The second person listed to speak is Chantel Sawada. Are you there?
Yes, hello, how are you?
All right, thank you. And you're on the eastern side.
Yeah, I'm in number 3 Belgrave Street. I was born at number 3 and I reside in number 3. On top of what Joe's already mentioned, my concerns are the extent of the excavation, which runs pretty much 50% down the side of my property, and the fact that my property has no footings to it and is actually built on sand. It was built in 1916. Is a great concern on the integrity of the building and what it will do, and the fact that we're on a downward slope as well is a major issue for me. The fact that the basement, as Joe said, is absolutely ginormous. It's just, you know, excessively oversized. And the fact that dilapidation report really does need to be done. Geotech report, it's failed to adequately consider the potential construction impacts and the structural integrity of the house. Yeah, look, besides the massive wall that runs up down the side of me, which will block out most of any sun that I get from the western side, the height of it and the fact that I'm already in a ditch, that they're building a massive wall next to me, which will really put me into a much larger hole, it's just a massive. Look, really, finally, yeah, look, it's basically the dilapidation report that and my concern about the extent of the excavation that is a real big concern for me.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. I'll just see if anyone has any questions. Sandra Robinson.
Look, just really a comment for Chantal that there is a condition requiring a dilapidation report, condition 24. It doesn't actually specify the properties to be considered, but it does require a dilapidation report for any adjoining or nearby property.
And would that be pre and post, before and after?
Well, the council's condition just requires it to be prepared and made available to you.
I think the answer is that it's pre, and then if anything occurs subsequently, that is set against what was the assessed position beforehand. And
it's a standard council condition.
Okay.
Graham Brown?
No questions, thank you.
Morell?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you for your assistance, Ms. Sawada.
Thank you.
And your comments, of course, will be taken into account, as I said before. Moving on to item number 2, which relates to the proposed development at 19 Wonderland Avenue, Tamarama. The person listed to speak is Mr. Nick Burns. Are you there, Mr. Burns?
Nick Burton, I assume.
Yes, just before you start, Rosalina, is the alarm working?
Yes, the alarm's working.
Is it? All right, good. Thank you. Mr. Burns, your 3 minutes can start now, as soon as you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members. So my submission still holds true. I request the panel again denies the application to extend the upper floor balcony due to the impact on our ocean views and, more importantly, the acoustic and visual privacy of my family at 8 Illong Avenue, neighbouring on the property's western boundary. Contrary to the assessor's report, the site analysis plan showing their balcony does not impact our view of the beach is factually incorrect. I made this clear in my submission with photos and maps as evidence. If you draw a line between our house and the beach on Google Maps, it directly hits the balcony of 19 Wonderland. Even with the proposed reduced footprint, our ocean views will be impacted by the additional bulk of the balcony and the planned table and stairs. On privacy, the assessor states that the extended balcony is unlikely to cause significant and unreasonable additional privacy impacts upon the adjoining properties. I disagree completely with this statement. The whole reason for the extension is to change the purpose of that balcony to an outdoor entertaining area. This will increase the use and foot traffic of the balcony, and it means more people looking directly down into our house and increased noise. The current third floor balcony looks directly into our backyard, including our swimming pool where our 2 young kids swim almost daily, our back entertaining terrace, our ground floor living room, our upper floor balcony, our upper floor sitting room, our upper floor home office, our master bedroom, and our upper floor toilet. We view this extension as unreasonable intrusion into our privacy. I also quote the assessment of the original DA from July last year. The proposed balcony extension will exceed the maximum size controls specified under section 2.5 of part C2 of the DCP, which are 10 metres squared in area and 1.5 metres in depth. The resultant area and depth of the balcony are 28.9 metres squared, now reduced to 23.2 and 3.15 metres respectively. The front third floor balcony is accessed directly from living and dining rooms, which are active parts of the dwelling and are anticipated to have the most frequent occupation and activity. The proposed extension of the balcony will increase visual and acoustic privacy impacts, and the extension of the balcony is not supported. Now, there's nothing that was written in that prior refusal that has actually changed. It will still exceed maximum size controls. It will still increase in activity due to the location next to the new dining and living rooms and the entertaining purpose, and it will still result in an unreasonable increase in visual and acoustic privacy. Privacy screens here are not the answer, as they will significantly reduce our views of the beach. And instead, I ask that the applicant use one of their many other suitable areas for entertaining. The dining area next to the proposed balcony with glass doors that can open right up, the private outdoor terrace on the same third floor, and the large landscaped backyard. They have an application for a huge house with all the amenities anyone could ever need, and even with the revised plans, the balcony is an unreasonable intrusion into our views and privacy and will significantly exceed maximum size controls. Finally, I also ask that the panel retroactively request the applicant to approve privacy glass on any windows facing our house as part of the original DA approval for the same privacy concerns. And I'm alarmed that this was not considered by the assessor in the original approval.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. I'll just see if there are any questions. Ms. Robinson?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Morell?
No, thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Mr. Burton, I'm just looking at a site plan. You're to the southwest of the site, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
There's an existing balcony. What they're proposing is to extend the balcony in the central part of that balcony that extends the width of the dwelling. You mentioned a number of concerns about privacy and overlooking. Is it possible, if you stand at the very southern end of the balcony, that you have those same impacts?
As in, if the applicant stood at the southern impact of their balcony, that they would have all of the same privacy impacts?
Yes.
Yes, so on the existing balcony, the exact same impacts occur. My concern is that the change in use of the balcony from a relatively small balcony will now become a major outdoor entertaining area, and there'll be kind of more
people there.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
more people there.
So the issue about view loss has been resolved, is that right?
No, I think the view loss is still relevant. It is decreased, definitely, because it's now offset. It's only the central part of the balcony, but we will still be able to see the extension directly as we are looking to the ocean. It will jut out to our views. And also the table and chairs now that would be sitting on the balcony would also therefore kind of be new to our views and outlook.
Right, anything further from members of the panel? Morell?
No, thanks.
Well, yes, thank you, Mr. Burns, and everything that you've said, of course, will be taken. Pardon?
Sorry, Mr. Burton.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Thank you, Ms. Morell. Yes.
Okay.
Actually, it says Burns on the, sorry, you are Mr. Burton, aren't you?
That's right, I am.
Yes, you're listed as Burns. Burns was another person. That's resolved. Thank you. And I'm sure we all understood which person you were and which property you were addressing.
Thank you.
Your assistance and all that will be taken into account. The next item on the agenda is item number 3, relating to the proposed development at 10 Wonderland Avenue, Panorama. And the person listed to speak is Steve Coulous. Did I get that right, Mr. Coulous?
You were pretty close, thank you.
Pretty close. That's good for me. You wish to address?
I do, thank you. Thank you.
It starts now.
Thank you. And thanks to the panel for listening to us and to Waverley Council for reviewing our DA. It's quite a modest DA. And the major components of it have been largely accepted. The 2 issues that have been flagged in the consent part of the landscape, there were 2 proposed plants in the front courtyard. One is an olive tree and one is a banksia tree. The olive tree has a natural growing height of 2.5 to 3.5 metres, which keeps it below our front wall height. And therefore we think it should be acceptable. The second part of that tree is that it only has 400 millimetres of soil depth. So it does not really stand a chance of ever getting to that 3.5 metre height limit. Secondly, the banksia has a much larger height that it's starting from because it's in a raised planter, and we're happy to have that one omitted and replaced with something else. My intention though would be somehow if the panel could consider a way by which we didn't have to go back to council for approval prior to CC. We are time poor, and this minor DA is now 4 months into the process. So if there was a way that we could do it by conditions of consent, that would be greatly appreciated. The second issue is we have a subfloor storage room. There are 2 of them actually on the 2 lower ground floors of this home. We have sought permission to put a small window into the upper level of the 2 subfloor storage rooms, and council are moving by condition of consent to omit those from our proposal. Now, these rooms below the house are subfloor rooms. They back onto the rock escarpment and they are damp, miserable places. Even as a storeroom, they really suffer. And the windows are not to turn these spaces into habitable spaces, but to allow them the benefit of some natural light and, more importantly, some ventilation. This site that our client purchased not even 12 months ago has been overdeveloped historically, and there is not even space on this land for a garden shed. And these rooms are this home's garden shed. And affording a garden shed, a window and a bit of ventilation should be reasonable, we think. And we're asking council to take on board our request for ventilation and light to subfloor spaces, especially in light of the street council asset recently blocking up and creating quite a terrific amount of damage to our client's home. In particular, these 2 subfloor storage rooms, which are now wet and underwater, which is obviously a storm event. But the remaining fact is that these rooms are constantly damp and miserable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coulous. I'll just see if there's any questions. There was a bit of interest in trees earlier. I don't know whether that's prevailing. Ms. Morell?
No, thank you.
Ms. Robinson?
Look, just a quick question. I was the one questioning about the trees. I thought it was a shame to remove the canopy trees. So I give some thought to what you've said and seek some advice from council. The windows, I mean, the windows that you've proposed are very large windows if you look on those elevations. Is there some compromise to give council the comfort they want but give your client the ventilation thereafter? I mean, they're big, they look like big bedroom windows, which is probably what's triggered the officer's concerns.
Sure. Yeah, look, absolutely. Our intention is to get light and ventilation to rooms or spaces that are subfloor and just miserable. So yeah, we'd be open-minded about that. But how would you deal with that? Would that be a
Oh, look,
committee?
we would seek some advice from the staff, but I'm just interested to, yeah, just.
What's your reaction? That's what
Yeah.
we want.
My reaction is positive.
And would you suggest a size?
I can give you the size of what's there, and we'll start.
No, we don't want there. It's what you
No,
want.
we know what's there. Yeah.
Tell us what you want.
Well, I would have thought
Yeah,
something
at least we know.
600 wide would be good. 600 wide louver, perhaps, for ventilation. They don't have to be that tall. Maybe 1200 by 600.
It's not a viewing facility, is it? It's only a ventilation and light.
Yeah, you can only see the dirt, basically, or the neighbour's wall.
I'm just curious, do those windows get shown on the plans, on the basement plan?
The windows?
Yeah.
They do, but you have to look at the notation on the plan.
Ah, so you.
Have you got DA12 in front of you?
Oh, it's there. Okay. Yes. Thank you. I understand. Yeah. I was looking at the level below. Thank you.
All set?
Just one question, Mr. Koulos, are both of those windows in cut?
Are they what, sorry?
In cut? Are they below ground level?
Have been excavated.
It's the ground. If you look at DA12, W1 is effectively adjacent to the ground level. So the level of that undercroft space is pretty much ground level there.
Are there any overlooking or privacy issues with the windows?
No, they both actually look into the neighbour's blank wall.
Okay. Thank you.
When I suggested they were miserable spaces, they've got very little going for them. So a little bit of light and ventilation would be great achievement.
Any discussion by panel members regarding a balcony? No. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Koulos.
Thank you, panel.
Your matters that you raised will be taken into consideration when the panel meets subsequently. Moving on to item number 4 on the agenda, relates to the proposed development at Wallangarra Road, Dover Heights, number 48 to be specific. And the first, both speakers are neighbours, as I understand it, and the first speaker listed is Daniel Springer. Are you there, Mr. Springer?
I'm here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Springer. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you. Yes, we live at number 50, and we're seeking assurance that the appropriate analysis has or will be done and measures put in place regarding the underlying ground conditions to ensure that there will be no undermining of our home's foundations, footings or structure due either to subsidence when they hit sand, which they will, and drilling vibrations when they hit the sandstone. It is our understanding that this should include a dilapidation report, and I note that that is one of the conditions, but also a geotechnical assessment and to have access to a structural engineer's report. These concerns are particularly acute given the mix of sand and sandstone that exists in the area, the proximity of our house and number 48 to the common boundary. It's under a metre, which about less than a metre to the common boundary, and the extent and the depth of the proposed excavations. And to be honest, recent examples in the municipality where inadequate measures led to significant damage and of adjacent properties, and there's been a lot of media coverage on some of those. So thank you.
Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Springer. I'll see if there's any questions. Ms. Robinson. You're muted.
Sorry, no, only just to say that you've obviously picked up that there is a condition about dilapidation, but there is also a condition that requires an engineer, practicing structural engineer, geotechnical engineer to detail the bulk excavation and piling technique, which is on condition 11.
Yeah, and I guess it's the piling technique we're particularly interested, given that they're doing it under the house, they will be limited in how they can do that, and would be just interested to know before the construction certificate is granted that how they're planning to do that.
Be a matter for council to refer it to you if that's their determination, but
I mean, it's
the
actually a
report
matter
has to be approved. And that satisfy you, Ms. Robinson, your question?
Yeah, there's more a comment than a question.
Thank you, yes. Mr. Brown?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Morell?
Thank you. No.
Good. Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Springer, and your comments will be taken into account.
Thank you.
The next person listed is the other neighbour, Jonathan Kaplan. Are you there, Mr. Kaplan? I can...
yes, we can see you. You can take yourself off mute.
Mute.
I can unmute myself now. Sorry about that.
There you go. You're on
Yes.
now. Thank you. Your 3
Yes.
minutes starts now, Mr. Kaplan.
Thank you. In addition to being a neighbour, for my sins, I'm a property lawyer, so I've looked at this from some legal aspects. And the application in this case clearly breaches the floor space ratio requirements. And in relation to section 4.6 of the local environmental plan, in my opinion, it is wholly inadequate in demonstrating sufficient environmental planning grounds. And turning to what the applicant has said about that is, describes the breach as being technical. The breach is in excess of 30% above the approved and permissible floor space ratio. 1% would be technical, maybe 2% would be technical, but 30% is anything but technical. It's substantial and a gross breach of the permissible floor space ratios. There's nothing technical about it. It does this by ignoring 4.68 of the local environmental plan, which, 4.58 of the local environmental plan, which says the gross floor area of any existing or proposed buildings above or below ground or the boundaries of the site are to be included. And it wishes away the excess that will be created by this approval by saying it doesn't affect the bulk or the density. And you just can't do that. You can't say that the basement area to be created is not part of the bulk of the building. In the ordinary meaning of bulk, just means mass or size. It doesn't mean that you can exclude away areas which are inconvenient to the application.
Kaplan, can you just repeat where that is in the 4.6?
It's actually in 4.58. It says the gross floor area of any existing or proposed buildings within the vertical projection above or below ground of the boundaries of a site is to be included in the calculation of the total floor space for the purpose of applying a floor space ratio, whether or not the proposed development relates to all of the buildings. It's a clear, substantial, gross breach. And then 4.6 of the local environmental plan says there have to be sufficient environmental planning grounds to justify contravening the development standard. And in fact, no environmental planning grounds are specified. What's specified are private benefits to a private owner, none of an environmental planning basis. It doesn't provide additional housing or anything else in a low density area. It just provides additional benefit to the applicant and nobody else, and certainly not to the environment. And the going on, it talks about relocation of uses from other parts of the existing property, which is in fact not the case. What the plans show is that a media room and a table tennis room is to be created. There are no such rooms elsewhere in the house. These are new amenities, which the effect of which will be to
I
on
think
that
we just
basis,
reached the 3-minute limit, so if you could pull it all together for me in your legal style, Mr. Kaplan.
So simply put, there's a gross and substantial breach of the floor space ratio. No environmental planning grounds are put forward for that, only private benefits, and therefore the application should be rejected.
Thank you for your assistance. I'll see if there's anybody who wants to raise a question. Mr. Brown?
No questions for me, thank you.
Ms. Morell? Ms. Robinson?
Nothing.
All right, we'll have a look at that, Mr. Kaplan. Thank you for raising it.
Can I ask one very private question to Mr. Koulous? If he's any relation to Andre Koulous, please send him my regards.
Okay, good. All right, well,
I will.
I didn't know we'd become social media, but nevertheless, we're moving on.
You're live on YouTube.
I'm moving on to unit number 5 before we get round to cheerio calls. That item number 5 deals with the proposed development at 64 Fletcher Street, Bondi. There's no one registered to speak at that meeting. So accordingly, this aspect of the consideration by the panel has been completed. The meeting will now be adjourned into private session. The panel will make the determination this afternoon. The resolution.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yeah.
Sorry, there was one speaker for item 5, and it's Mr. Chris Grinham.
Yeah, thank you,
Oh,
Mr.
I'm sorry,
Chair.
Mr. Grinham. I do apologise, Mr. Grinham.
It's okay.
It's entirely my fault.
Not a problem.
It's not because you're an architect, it's just my oversight.
Trust me, I've been called worse.
Have you?
Listen, I'd just like to thank
you. You've got 3 minutes and 15 seconds bonus for my discourtesy.
I hopefully I don't need the extra 15 seconds. So I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to address the panel. If you've had an opportunity to review the council officer's report, you'll note that the application consists of mainly internal alterations to facilitate a change from a dual occupancy to a single residence on the site, along with a number of changes to administration patterns, which have been instigated mainly to facilitate the internal changes to the planning. We've been very conscious of maintaining privacy between the neighbours and making sure that we are good neighbours to the residents around us. You'll note that there were no objections to the application during the notification, which in my experience in Waverley is quite rare. We note the council officers have recommended approval. The subsequent DBU also gave concurrence. We look forward to, in short, the panel's positive consideration of our application, and we look forward to hopefully receiving approval in due course.
All right, thank you. Doesn't sound as though you want to talk us out of it. Sandra Robinson, have you got any questions?
No, thank you.
Morell?
No, thank you.
Morell? Mr. Brown?
No questions, thank you.
All right, there you are, Mr. Grinham. Thank you very much for your assistance. As I was saying, the panel is now going to adjourn to consider each of the applications, and the actual resolutions and determinations will be published on the council's website as soon as practicable after the completion of that meeting. Meeting is adjourned till 2 o'clock. Panel members, stay on for a minute.